Welcome to the Feel Alive at Work online retreat. I'm Karen Hoffman of A Work Life You Love. I'm the host of the retreat, and I'm a coach specializing in helping people create work lives that are both fulfilling and personally sustainable. In this session, I'm speaking with Adriana Marchione. I'm so glad Adriana is part of this retreat because she is refreshing and delightful, and she has unique and refreshing ideas about how to find your aliveness and your heart's desire, which is really helpful when you're trying to create a work life that's enlivening and that you're passionate about. I want to tell you a little bit about Adriana. She's an artist, therapist, and educator. About her art, she works in multiple fields. She's an award-winning documentary filmmaker. She's a dancer, as well as a photographer. As an educator and therapist, Adriana works with movement-based expressive arts, and she's internationally recognized for this work. Adriana coaches clients and teaches courses. Her business is called Art Cures, and her specialty is working with artistic types to preserve mental health while expanding their capacity to do the work they love and to be in alignment with their true values. She's a faculty member of the renowned Tamalpa Institute in California and the Wheat Institute in Canada. Last but not least, Adriana has presented her creative healing approach at festivals, conferences, treatment centers, including South by Southwest, the National Council on Drug and Alcohol Dependence, and the Commonwealth Club. Adriana, I want to give you a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Karen. It's wonderful to be here and have this time with you.
For many people, work either starts out or becomes what we have to do. We depend on it for our security, and we go into a line of work, or we take a job feeling like we have to, or it becomes that way over time. And some of the pathways people get in, some common pathways people get into their work is because parents wanted us to go into a certain area of work, or we thought it was important or prestigious. Sometimes we just took what was available without thinking about it too much. Sometimes we're in situations where we're under a lot of pressure, or we just didn't know what else to do. In our culture, we don't get a lot of guidance about work, about how to make choices about work. What most of us didn't do is think about what makes us come alive. Okay, and that would be a really different starting point. If we thought, gee, what do I love? What do I care about? And the first step in creating a work life that enlivens you and that you feel passionate about is to identify what enlivens you and what you're passionate about. And you're going to be talking about that with us today. And at the outset, I just want to ask you to tell us a little bit about your relationship to the topic about creating a work life that you're excited about. In our prior conversation, you told me that you've transformed your work life a couple of times. And now you have a work life, this is over decades, and now you have a work life that is very aligned with who you are and what you love. Can you tell us a bit of your story about that?
Yeah, everything you just said, I think so it just feels so pivotal. And focusing on what makes us come alive is definitely an ongoing question that I ask people that work with me, whether it's in a teaching setting or one-on-one setting, and also something I've asked myself over and over again, throughout the years. I started out as an artist and went into college in Ohio, actually a place called the College of Worcester, rural Ohio. And I didn't know what I was going to do before I got there, but I had been doing photography in high school and was getting just inspired in different ways. I felt like I had an artistic sensibility, and when I got there and started doing art classes and experimenting, it really felt like that's where my heart was. That's where I felt most connected and most like enthusiastic. Even though, like you were saying about parental, parental guidance or sometimes distraction, I think my parents really were not happy when I said, "Oh, I think I'm going to major in art." It was really not what they had in mind. They want something more practical. And I just felt, luckily, I felt like I could just keep following it anyways. I didn't, even though I had a very, like, my father's Italian, and it's a very strong personality. It was very opinionated. I was able to just stick to my guns and keep going, because it really, yeah, I felt really alive. I felt really like it was just so clear to me that that was where I needed my energy to go. And so it's interesting because, I went to school and then came out kind of with a lot of high ambitions, but trying to make it as an artist and a photographer specifically, there wasn't really a roadmap. And I leaned back into secretarial work, which is kind of what I did. I'd already, like, learned how to type and done these just odd jobs, temp jobs. And so when I kind of got into the field of work, I did all these, like, different things, like admin jobs, and working in hospitals, and I was a medical transcriptionist. It was just all these little spattering of things to try to make it work. And finally, I remember like the straw that was like the straw that, what is it? What's the phrase?
Broke the
The
camel's
straw that
back.
broke the camel's back. The straw that broke the camel's back, is I had really hit, like, also a mental health crisis. And I think a lot of people who are therapists or do work around wellness and healing, often they've gone through some transformation. And I had really hit a bottom with drinking and alcoholism. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression, and alcohol had become my way to cope. And so I found also my way into recovery from that, from addiction. And I was just, it was like reinventing myself in all these ways. And I ended up at this gaming job. I was at this gaming job back in San Francisco, and back in the before, it was like in the early 90s, before the whole tech boom started, but it was the beginnings of it. And it was also when email first started. Can you imagine? Like, sometimes I can't even imagine not having email. That was like email had just started. And the job was so horrible. Like, there were so many things about it that I hated. The people were rude and just really uptight. My boss was, like, completely, like, manic and very, very demanding constantly. I felt like there was no support, and to really grow in the job. And they even had massage therapists there, like, on work. So I would go and I remember I would go and get massages from this massage therapist. And he said to me every time, "You do not belong here. This is not you. You do not belong in this job." And finally, one day, just, I had it and I quit on the spot. I left and I never went back. And that, I think, was the beginning of the end for me, where I realized that I don't fit into this 9 to 5 box. I am not somebody who can deal with these demands and these random emails that were coming. I had no idea how to manage it. I was used to the phone and mail, typing a letter. But it just felt so high octane and so against kind of my artistic sensibilities. So that really was the catalyst for me to kind of go back to school and start learning about art therapy and movement-based therapy, and really to shift my whole career. And so that was, like, one of the real turning points for me. And I had encouragement from a lot of people in my life, to, like, listen, like, what do I really want? What do I really need? But it was also just this just very deep inner knowing. And sometimes we hit a wall, right? We really hit a wall and realize, like, whatever I'm doing that's not working, I can't do it anymore, you know. And I've had other little and big kind of turning points along the way, but that's, to me, was one of the most significant ones.
You had this inner voice when you were very young. I'm an artist. And then, no, the message from your dad and the world really is like, you can't make a living being an artist. And then, so you gave it a go, which, a lot of us get advice like that. You can't make a living doing X or Y. But then we don't get advice on, all right, well, how shall I make a living? You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
How
Well,
should,
good.
exactly.
Yeah, good for
Yeah.
you for continuing to listen to that voice, and figuring out what else you could do, and knowing that you didn't have to stay in that situation that you weren't happy in. Um,
Yeah. And I think too that one of the things about, and a lot of people I work with, especially younger, but sometimes older too, that going back to school, getting education, learning new skills. I think that was important for me. Is I had already an art background, but then I was moving into this other orientation of like, oh, how do you use art as a healing and art as a therapy? And then I ended up getting a psychology degree. I mean, there was many steps along the way, and that has just expanded my worldview, expanded my perspective. And I needed that. I needed to see other options through kind of being around people who were encouraging me to say, well, there's this possibility and that possibility. And where I think I had been a little more narrow, there was kind of more of a narrow idea of what it might be to be a photographer, and wedding photography, or how do you make it like as a gallery artist, or even do I even want to do this admin work to make money and then have this passion on the side. I mean, there was just a lot of things that were confusing to me, but when I really got into that field of expressive arts therapy and really learning and seeing other people modeling that, I mean, all of a sudden there was just so many new ideas, so many new possibilities.
do you remember how you got exposure to expressive arts therapy?
Yeah, it was, I was, first thing I think was just sort of going through some magazines, seeing bulletin boards, around town, because I was new in recovery. I knew that I couldn't do art the way I used to do it. Like I said, my whole identity was changing. And I saw a class someone was teaching, and I'm not sure even where it popped up, but somehow I saw this class someone was teaching that was how to dance and creative focus. And it was like like a healing workshop. It was like a
Mm.
healing oriented workshop. And I just, oh, well, why not? I'll just go and give it a shot. And I was so compelled by it. I love
Mm.
the teacher. We had this really strong connection to other people who were there. I think we were like a group of 6 people. And the teacher was actually a student of the Tamalpa Institute, which was in Marin County, was the expressive arts therapy training program that I ended up going to, and now I've been connected to, and I've taught there for many years. And so it was interesting, like just this random finding this workshop, going to this workshop, then led me to, again, all these possibilities that I didn't even know existed.
Wow. Um, Amazing when you start making a change in your life, the different directions that it can lead. So you discovered recovery, and therapy, and you had this passion for art, and you put them together and went in this new direction. Um, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your own personal story. It's really valuable to hear it. I want to shift now and ask you, when we're trying to solve a problem, like what can I do for work that will allow me to thrive? We're often in our heads, we're trying to figure it out rationally. And you have an approach to problem solving, which is to be sure to also turn to the body, not only the head. Can you talk about that, starting with what you mean by it?
Karen, I'm realizing my internet's a little wacky here for a moment. Do you hear me okay? Just
Yeah.
had a moment of, okay. So in terms of getting out of our heads and into our bodies, yeah? And really, getting away from kind of this rational thinking, problem solving thinking, is so important. it's just so important. And it's such a big part of just my orientation and my work with people in terms of how do we find those moments of pause so we can really listen to ourselves beyond just that static of I have to do this, I have to do that, or here's my to-do list. And there's so many tools. I mean, there's so many things we now know about. Like there's so much mindfulness tools that we hear. A lot of people meditate. There's many things that we have like at our disposal. And I find that this idea of the sacred pause, which someone named a Buddhist teacher and psychologist, Tara Brach, talks about the sacred pause. And I find as an artist too, like, it's to me, like I find inspiration in the quiet moments and the moments that I can come down a little bit into where am I actually feeling myself in my surroundings. It may be that I go out and just get some fresh air for a moment and take a few deep breaths. It may be that I need to take a walk, get away from the screen. It may be even like having a shower or doing something very, just kind of ordinary to kind of feel a little bit more sense of like, okay, I have sensations, I can feel my feet on the ground, even shaking out a little bit, shaking it out and just letting the energy move in a different direction.
Mm.
Um, it's a way, just it's like you move away from whatever sometimes the problem is. It's like looking for work on the computer, through all the job listings or trying to craft a resume or doing networking. It all can get so, to me, often I just can start feeling a bit congested. That things can get a little confusing, or I might lose the thread of what actually, what am I actually needing out of this conversation, or what do I actually want to be doing, and can I weed out what really isn't working for me and what really sounds more appealing to me. So I think just having these moments where we just step away, we move away, we take those deep breaths, we take a walk and get a little perspective. They're just key moments to get more focused and to be more productive.
Um, I love hearing you describe that, and it's so fascinating to stop and think. Sometimes the suggestion to, like, how do you feel? Where are you? What do you see? Describing your senses and your bodily experience. It seems like I don't have time for that, but then when you do actually do it, and it makes me realize how much, how much in my head I am. And then it can be extremely productive to do some of these things that you're suggesting. Um, and so let's see. So similarly, when we're in our heads, we're usually figuring things out and thinking, we're in rationality. We're not so much in our emotions. We're trying to figure something out, and there's a lot riding on it. And um, you also think about emotion in a similar way, and use emotion, tap into your own emotion and help people tap into their emotion in a similar way that you do with the body. And I wonder if you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's a similar process. Just like, it's a similar process, but we're tapping into something different. And there's in the method that I use, which is connected to Tamalpa, it's called the Tamalpa Life Art Process. It's one of the prongs of my work. Is we look at the 3 levels of awareness, which are very basic, but it's useful to frame it, which is there's the mental and imaginal, there's the emotional, and then there's the physical. And that we sometimes can get caught in one or the other, just like we were just talking about. We can get caught in our mental and just be really, really heady, thinking very linear, in a very linear fashion. or we can get caught. Also, we can be just, sometimes we might get caught in our emotions. And when we're caught in our emotions, especially when we're trying to do something new, or we're looking if we're looking for work or trying to change careers, a lot of fear can be caught up in that. And it can, get really worried. We can get overexcited. Sometimes we might just get confused about what we actually want. There could just be a lot of emotional stress that shows up. And so having the opportunity to, again, sacred pause, have these times out to listen to what actually is happening in my inner life here. What's going on inside my emotional landscape that might need some attention. Because if we are working or pursuing work out of fear, or out of a sense of, just anxiety and extreme stress, that's also not a very productive way to be working. It's not a productive way to be, doing the next thing, the job search or the networking, etc. Or even sometimes the visioning. If we're really caught up in those stressful emotions, it can be a block from tuning into our true desire, tuning into what, how we can communicate in the most productive way, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah. So to me, I mean, that if we can just tune into it a little, oh God, I'm feeling a lot of fear. I'm feeling a lot of maybe even sadness sometimes. And grief can come up for people, especially in times of change. Then we can tend to it, and we can tend to ourselves in a different way. And that might mean, like, maybe we have to bring it to therapy, or we have to, get some support and call a friend, or again, maybe it's about taking a walk or going to the gym or just doing something to move the energy along, so we can get beyond it and come back to a more focused way of doing the next thing.
That's beautiful. I find that sometimes I just need to feel it. If I'm busy figuring it out, I'm not feeling what I feel, and sometimes I just need to feel it. And I learned that from Tara Brach, who you mentioned, taking that sacred pause, to be in your body and to feel your feelings, and then you become freed up to do whatever it is that you want to or need to do.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I wonder, do you want to talk about any examples of how you've worked with people around either um, working with their body or emotion? Would you like to give some examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. um, because I'm an arts therapist and a creative person, I often just bring it right to the art if I can. And I work with a lot of creative people, as you mentioned in the beginning. So a lot of people come to me who are dancers or visual artists or performers, writers. And so they already have a creative bent. Not everybody. I work with people that don't, even though my feeling is that we all are all creative. It just shows up in different ways. So bringing our experience back to those three levels. What am I feeling emotionally, physically, mentally? And I often have people do quick sketches on the three levels. And so, just maybe the beginning of session or the middle of session, or if I'm teaching, we might do that as an exercise, just to take a pause together and a little quiet moment, maybe drop into the body through a short meditation, and then have them just express first, like, okay, what am I noticing physically? Oh, okay, I feel stress in a certain place. Maybe my stomach's a little, agitated, or I'm feeling tense in my shoulders. And so that they create a little sketch out of that. It might be abstract, it might be literal. And then we do the same with the emotion. So if I'm feeling emotionally depleted and there's a sadness inside, or maybe I'm feeling, again, back to the fear, like I really can feel that gripping of fear, then put that in a quick sketch. So that might come out in a certain texture or color or shape. It might, again, land in a certain part of the body. And then we can do the mental and imaginal. So are there any stories? Is there anything kind of present? Even the mind, is the mind really busy and active? And then they put that in a sketch. And so having it out in front, and people can do that on their own too. Could just be, maybe you just want to do the emotion, like a quick sketch, or even just dumping a few words down. Like, I fear, that's how I'm feeling, fear. I fear, da 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 da. I fear, da da. Like writing a list of fears out and getting them out of your head, and getting your inner experience down into, again, a little writing or these sketches. It creates some distance. Just like you said, like feeling the feelings. But also, if we get it out, it is a way of feeling it, moving through it, and expressing it in some way, so that we have some more space inside.
And so if I'm feeling uninspired in my quest to change my work, I might sit down and with some materials for drawing and draw about how I'm feeling. Say the three levels again, the emotion.
Yes. So how am I feeling in the body, physical?
Mhm,
How am I feeling emotionally?
mhm,
And then what's happening mentally? And
mhm,
with that often is imaginal. There might be images that come, there might be specific thoughts that come.
mhm.
Yeah.
And and that process in and of itself um, takes you to your feelings certainly, and to the body, and also your sketching, your creating. It takes you to your creativity. It takes you to art, um, and and then what? And then you what happens typically after you do that? Like,
I mean, if I'm working with somebody, let's say one-on-one, then we're going to talk about it. We're going to, okay, what showed up for you? So, or if people are doing it in a group, they're going to share with a partner, and since this is what arrived. And but if someone's doing it on their own, you know, it's an opportunity to just, again, okay, I've gotten this out, and maybe I've done these 3 sketches. Is there any writing, a little journal writing? What is this? What has this revealed to me? What do I see in these images? What do I imagine as I look at them? And that having that interplay, being able to be curious, we can go deeper into some understanding about ourselves, and again, what we might need. The other thing I want to just say is, in relationship to moving, that using the, like, moving the body, and I was saying before about like shaking it out or taking some deep breaths. I also, and this is a very direct expressive arts and movement therapy exercise, is that we notice what we're feeling. So let's say, again, back to, I'm feeling really fearful, like I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to, find the financial security I need. And that fear, instead of spinning around in the head, let me dance that fear. I'm going to put that fear into movement in some way, and just see, like, if I could just, like, experience, like, instead of just sit. Sometimes people can be very successful at just sitting and tracking it in the body, and I think that can also be very powerful to move it along. But there's also something very, we could say, cathartic, but also releasing, about letting it move through your whole body, right? So that the fear becomes this, um, it becomes this energy, and we're saying, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to face it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to move it. And then I'm going to find a way to, like, let it go through the body, like, let it go and release it. Because our bodies carry so much. They carry so much of our emotion, so much of our stress. And literally, movement is an antidote for, I mean, I work a lot with grief. Movement is an antidote for grief. Movement is an antidote for anger. Movement is an antidote for moving through, so many of our emotions. And it just allows us to shift and release something, so we actually, again, create more space inside.
That's very interesting. Uh, I certainly personally know that I put my emotions in my body, and I've never tried that. I've never tried dancing what it is that I'm feeling, and I'm gonna try that out. And what you seem to be describing is it's a sacred pause for some checking in and tending to that then allows you to be more grounded and um, take the next step, keep on in your day, keep on living your life, and but you've tended to yourself and you're more in your body and you're more grounded. You're more resourced to do whatever it is that you want or need to do. That's what
Yeah,
that's
not
what I hear.
yeah, and again, that might not work for everybody. Some people are like dancing. No way, I'm not going to dance. But putting on a good song or some, music or an artist that you really like and having music come. Sometimes I have people do playlists too. Create a playlist, of like this emotion and this experience you're having. What would songs kind of help you represent that? And often doing it on the spin,
Mm,
like if you want more confidence, if you want to feel more joy, if you want to feel more aliveness, making a playlist of music that incorporates those qualities and lyrics that inspire you or make you
mm,
feel more alive. And then, that's the kind of the flip side. Some people, it might feel scary to move an emotion that's a difficult emotion, but often we feel more comfortable maybe moving or dancing just for fun. Like that's kind of a very normal common activity that people go out and dance. And so sometimes just getting your energy moving in the opposite direction. Like maybe I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling stress. I'm just going to move something that makes me feel really alive and kind of motivated and gets my energy going and lifts me up.
I love that. Um, just a wonderful process for creating a shift um, when you get to a stuck place. So you talked about sketching, which is a kind of art. I know you're a proponent of art as a healing resource, and I wonder, you know, I'm sort of thinking about what tools and resources you use, and thinking about how they can be used um, for healing, but including your work life. So I'm curious if you have more to say about art as a resource for healing your work life or whatever it is that you're trying to heal. Um, and you talked about sketching, but I wonder if you have more to say about art as a resource for people who want to connect with what makes them thrive.
I'm going to read a quote by John O'Donohue,
Mm.
who I just think, I'm not sure if your listeners know his work, but he's no longer with us, but he's written a lot about, he's a poet and he's written a lot about spiritual life and also just living a deep, meaningful life. And so this is a quote from John O'Donohue. Each person is always on the threshold between their inner world and their outer world, between light and darkness, between known and unknown, between question and quest, between fact and possibility. This threshold runs through every experience we have, and our only real guide to this world is the imagination. When you awaken someone's imagination, you're giving them a new kingdom, a new world. And I wanted to read that because what the work you do, and when someone is in a time of change with their career or looking for a new opportunity through a job, is that it is a threshold. It's a time of big change, and listening to what is a deeper calling, like we talked before, or what feels really true about who they are, And using the imagination to me is an artistic resource. That's what, in many ways, that's what art is about, is tapping into the imagination, into the unknown, birthing something that wasn't there before. And so a lot of times what I'm just trying to help people access is that there's so much more possibility than what we might imagine. Like, just this is what's here, but there's so much more. And art in all of its different forms helps us tap into that larger perspective. It helps us get out of the box. And so when I have somebody step away from linear thinking, or I'm having someone express their emotions through art, that it is like something new gets born, something new gets birthed, or they're doing a dance and something new arrives. Um, and I really find that creative work, and it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to be quote unquote an artist to do it. Um, Everyone's a photographer now because our iPhones are so amazing, or our smartphones are so amazing. And there's just so many, I'd love to do that. Like when I'm traveling in a new place, or sometimes just taking a walk, just capture things oh, they just, oh, that really inspires me, or look at that beautiful light, or look at that amazing piece of art on that building. And so when we tap into these little moments, these creative moments, or make art ourselves, um, it really can we can get connected to more to our intuition. We can get connected more to what's most alive within us, what might feel inspiring to us. And I think those qualities are really important when we're in the threshold of change, is to have those things that help you say, oh, this is when I do this, or when I experience this, or when I watch that, I feel most like myself. Or maybe I feel even an expanded sense of self. So to me, art really, it really helps us thrive. And also, we don't have to necessarily be expressing art. I often give people an assignment to go and experience it. Watch a movie that, or documentary, or a go to a poetry reading, or go to a museum and just wander and let yourself just see what attracts you, what inspires you. And often those findings are clues into the larger picture of our lives.
Yet another way to step away and take in art, someone else's creative expression, and see what we resonate with and what that means for us in terms of the transition, the threshold that we're crossing. I really love that. Thank you for that. Um, so thank you, Adriana, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. It's really helpful and valuable. I understand that you have a gift available for our audience. Would you like to tell us about it?
I would. It is a somatic and arts handbook, and it has a focus of working and supporting people with addiction and trauma. So there is a focus on that, but it's partly because that's also been a big thing that and my specialties are grief and trauma and addiction. And a lot of people also come to me for those themes in their lives, which are often thresholds in different ways. But the handbook gives many, many different tools and thoughts and perspectives, but mostly a lot of, like a handbook does, like a lot of exercises for people to go through in terms of finding more mindfulness, embodiment, working through difficult emotions, using art as a tool to access ourselves, and as well as different movement thoughts and experiences of like, how do we tap more into our body's resource. So yeah, and just like we've been talking about, there's a lot of things in there that can help you change your focus, step away from stress and into a more expanded view.
It's a really wonderful resource. I read through it myself, and it's extremely generous, and it I'm sure anyone will find it very helpful if you don't identify as um, someone who's in experiencing grief or trauma or addiction. Don't let that stop you. This is a resource for anybody. So I really highly recommend that you take Adriana up on this really wonderful gift. So if people want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
You can find me in all the normal places. I'm on Facebook. Find me through Art Cures, or you can find me through my name, Adriana Marchione. I'm on Instagram, not really on X anymore. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me through my website at artcures.com. It's art-cures.com. So, and you can, if you Google me, you can also find me pretty easily. And yeah, so I would love to hear from anyone, or happy to answer questions or any responses to the handbook. It's always great to know that what I'm putting out there is supporting or resonating with folks.
Terrific. To close our conversation, I wonder if you could share with our listeners what you think is the one quality or value that you think is most important in order to embrace. Sorry, I'm screwing up the question. What's the one quality or value that you feel is the most important to embrace to connect with your aliveness?
Yeah, you had sort of offered me this question beforehand, and what I had two before I came up with the last one, so I'll also give you all three. So the one that I felt like might be the most useful is self-honesty, like
Mm.
really being honest with, what's really happening for me? How do I really feel about this? You know, um, what might be what might be under there that is really calling me that I may be pushing down or not listening to fully. So self-searching honesty, I do think is really the one of the most important values or qualities. But I also wrote compassion for oneself, because it's being able to not be critical or like push ourselves too hard or force ourselves into to feeling like, oh, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, but having compassion, because when you're in a career change or you're looking for work, or you're revisioning your life, it's hard. So I think just being kind to oneself, and also being really committed and persistent. I've found that I have gone through so many obstacles and met so many challenges by not giving up and just continuing, just like, all right, I'm just going to turn another stone. I'm going to take another workshop. I'm going to talk to another person and network, and that has made all the difference for things to just keep unfolding.
Wonderful. I love it. I asked for one and you're like, no, there's three.
Well, there's probably
And
20, but
and what?
there's probably 20, but we'll
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
keep it
yeah.
simple.
There's more than one. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And totally resonates for me. Adriana, I'm so grateful for you being with us today. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you shared.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Karen. I hope everyone, just really enjoys this whole experience of being a part of the summit with you.
Me too. And thank you everyone for tuning in.